Welcome to FMH InsureCast, a podcast created by Farmers Mutual Hail designed to deliver expertise and insights from trusted FMH team members and industry experts. Each new episode will dive into new products, industry updates, and innovative solutions. Let's get to today's topic.
Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Dave DeCap, back here again with you today for a very exciting episode of FMH InsureCast. As we all know, there has been a lot of recent, some would say a flurry of activity in the ag industry. I'm not giving anybody any new news, but we've had a continuing resolution in the last few weeks that included a farm bill extension, economic aid, disaster aid. We've got a new administration coming in. And with that brings in all the political appointees along with that. So we have that plus everything else going on. We have a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things we really want to talk about. So it makes sense to talk about the impacts of these things and the biggest concerns that farmers are facing in particular, but our crop insurance agents are facing the same thing, and how everybody can prepare ultimately, like from our piece of the pie and where we focus, to make the best crop insurance decisions to help at least mitigate some of those concerns. So to do the best of our ability to do that. So to tackle some of these issues, we have a very special guest today. But before I bring him on, let's bring in my partner in crime, Ken Ripley. Ken's a familiar voice, a familiar face to the podcast. He's our Northwestern Regional Sales Manager, and just as importantly, he's a Southern Minnesota farmer. So, Ken, how you doing?
Doing great. Thanks. So excited to be on here today and looking forward to our discussion.
All right. Great to have you. We need this firepower because I know Ken's as excited as I am to bring our guest on. So without further ado, let's bring him on. Mr. Chip Flory from Farm Journal. Chip is the host of AgriTalk, and I know you don't need much introduction, but want to welcome you to InsureCast, Chip.
Dave, thank you so much. Ken, good to see you again, man.
Nice to see you.
Yeah. All
right. Super great to have you here. Really looking forward to the discussion. Like I said before we got on live here, free form discussion. There's so many things to talk about. We're going to try and hit some of the most important ones. But before we get going, Chip, given the timing and everything, can you talk a little bit about what you're up to? I mean, you're the host of AgriTalk. You do 2 of those a day. Just got finished with one as we're recording. But what else fills your plate these days?
Yeah, policy and news and issues we talk about each morning on AgriTalk, and the afternoon we talk about markets. And there's no shortage of things to talk about on AgriTalk right now, and we've got a lot of people that want to get on and tell their story about the things that are important to them, and so we're having to do a bit of picking and choosing on exactly what's going to get on and what we might have to put off. But boy, oh boy, it is an active. I guess that'd be the easiest way to describe it, Dave. It's an active time for us right now. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, just listening to cherry picking a few AgriTalks over the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's amazing the amount you can't get to because there's so many of the moving parts going on. And unfortunately, a lot of them, things we don't necessarily want to see happen, but really need to be aware of.
Yeah, Dave, and just to make one point on that, we try to dig a little bit deeper on AgriTalk, as you know. We when we get a guest on, we don't keep them to 2 or 3 minutes. We keep them on for 10 minutes. We have that conversation. We want to make sure that we get to the bottom line of the story that we're talking about. So it's a little bit different format, but we get through as much as we possibly can.
Yeah. Excellent. So let's start at the highest level possible we can. Do you have any, just especially given the recent conversations you've had, do you have any general thoughts on the outlook of where we are right now with U.S. Ag, U.S. Ag in particular, but obviously it encompasses the entire world. What are the things that are that you're keeping an eye on?
We're going through a huge transition, guys. That's the bottom line. 2024, what we saw happen to net farm income stunk. And the way that the cash flow it has just drained out of the industry here late in 2024, very early parts of 2025 is nothing short of scary. So that's part of the transition. Now, when we look beyond that and taking a look at the Purdue University Ag Economy Barometer, for example, when
Mhm.
you look at the producers' reaction to that and survey responses, we see that there is optimism for 12 months out. There is optimism for 5 years out. And it's because they anticipate that we're probably putting in a low in this economy right now. Now, it might take a little while to, to lock in that low on revenue, but they feel like that's where we're at right now and things are going to get better. So it's a transition period and it's not going to be any fun for a while here.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
Right. Yeah. I'd just interject one thing here too, especially with with the Relief Act that just came out and the
Yeah.
dollars that are going to be coming, from the FSA office on programs in the next year. Uh, Love that as a producer, helps shore things up. But one of the things we're going to ask you is that kicking the can? Because I feel as inputs, nothing's going down. And does that injection does it just kick the pain out further? I mean, what's your thoughts?
Great point, Ken. Many will argue if we're going to have sub if we're going to have 4 1/4 corn, if we're going to have sub $10 beans, we're going to need to see some kind of an adjustment on the input side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But with the ERP on the 23 crop, ERP on 24 crop, the
Right.
economic assistance, the disaster aid, all the input suppliers out there are they're in business to get as much of it as they can.
Right.
And that's where the input prices sure look sticky to me. And we've seen some relief on the fertilizer side, but not enough to give us a whole lot of encouragement as far as what the profit potential is on this corn crop and the bean crop heading into 2025. It's a great point. We need to see a reset on those inputs and we need to see that, but at the same time, guys, when the inputs go through a reset, everybody's feeling the hard times.
Right.
That's the bottom line. Now, look at what's happening, obviously, on the equipment side of things with the layoffs at Deere, the layoffs at some of the other manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
The companies are feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be felt throughout the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing too is it just seems like, especially with the fertilizer side of things, the world demand, it's going to make it tough. I mean, especially some of the talk, the battle between countries, so to speak, right now. Is that going to help or hurt us? So we need to have a correction, but is the market going to let it correct? That's the big question.
Yeah, Ken, you're exactly right. I mean, we sit here and we think, okay, we've got a reason to be optimistic because, and I think most farmers have this attitude, this perception. One of the reasons to be optimistic is because of the incoming president. Trump is coming in. But at the same time, he talks about tariffs on Canada, and we're bringing in 80% of our phosphorus or potash, bringing in 80% of our potash from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to be putting a tariff on anything that comes in from Canada, there's another lift in your input prices. There's a lot to be sorted out. Okay. When it comes to tariff and trade issues, I tend to jump straight to the freer and the fairer. Okay. And I want to stay away from tariffs. And I think most want to stay away from tariffs. But at the same time, I understand that there is a place for this stuff.
Right.
And we'll find out in the first, I would say 60 days of the Trump administration, just how serious the I don't want to call them a threat, but just how serious the idea is that these tariffs are going to be put in place, or if they are just being used as leverage right now to start conversations that that Trump has gotten started because of the tariff talk.
Right.
Yeah.
True. Hey, while we're on the administration, so Brooke Rollins is a current nominee, or will be the current nominee for Secretary of Ag. What can you tell us, about her and her background? I mean, generally, the general news seems favorable as far as her position with Ag and understanding and background. But do you have some color you can add to that?
Boy, guys, I wish I had all kinds of color that I could add to it, but I don't. I'm not that familiar with Brooke. Now, this I understand. Of many of the nominees, which there are some controversial ones, it looks like she's got plenty of bipartisan support, and Miss Rollins is going to get through the nomination process very, very quickly. I will say this: one of the first conversations that I had with Jim Wiesmeyer, pro farmer policy analyst, about Brooke Rollins was that it's his understanding as well that if she picks up the phone and calls President Trump, he's going to take the call.
That's
That
saying something.
that is a good person to have in agricultural's corner.
Yeah.
When it comes to some of these policy issues that are going to be coming up, some of the trade issues that are going to be coming up. I mean, if the tariff card is played, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be talking to Rollins, and she's going to be passing that information on to the president. So I think that is an important piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things too is, so as we're, kind of talking about the extensions too with the American Relief Act, what, have you heard anything, with your talks with Jim Wiesmeyer, on kind of some direction on the backside with that too? We got the Farm Bill, and I'm hearing about one bill trying to come here in the next year. I mean, what's the insight you have on that side?
Man, borders, trade issues. I mean, they're all in tax packages, all in one bill. If everything that is included in this bill that they say is included on this first run, there's no question it'll be the biggest bill that's ever passed the history of the U.S. It is a monster. Now, does that mean that it should be broken up a bit into pieces so that we can all have maybe a better understanding of exactly what's in the bill? Sure. But when we are dealing with such slim margins, majority margins in the House and in the Senate, sometimes if they're going to get something big done, they're going to have to get creative on how they're going to get it done. And putting it all into one package, maybe somebody doesn't want to support the tax package, but they sure want to support the border initiative.
Right.
So they're voting for the border initiative and willing to go along with the tax. Whereas if the tax was a standalone, maybe they wouldn't do it. And I think it's the narrow margins in the House and the Senate that are driving this kind of a tactic to get this done. Can you imagine wrangling the cats and trying to, if every bill was done individually?
Right.
Oh man, you can herd cats once, but can you do it a second time? Can you do it a third time? Can you do it a fourth time? I think they're looking to just get this job done once.
In the span of 2 years too, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Because
yeah.
you don't know what's going to happen in midterms, and generally, historically, what
Dave.
happens in the midterms.
Dave, awesome point. Awesome point. If there's one big lesson that President Trump admits to learning in that Trump 1.0 is that he didn't focus enough on the first 2 years. of his first administration. This is a brand, it may be a similar administration, but it's a brand new presidency, and he ain't wasting no time,
Right.
fellas.
Well, we're seeing
He's
that already.
wasting no time.
Yeah.
He's
No.
going to hit the ground running in these first 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things too, just, kind of trailing back to a little bit on like, grains, seems like there's plenty of supply, right? We're coming off of what sounds to be record yields, and we'll know on this coming Friday,
Yeah.
what the official number is. But boy, it's seems like we're just so long. I mean, so much production now. With the prices have come down,
Mhm.
we're getting some sales outside the U.S., but
Yep.
what do we do to attract that worldwide buyer back to our
Yeah.
table when they just kind of left us with the dollar being so high valued?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Corn's done a pretty good job of it. Corn has on the domestic side with the ethanol grind, on the feed side. I mean, guys, they're running some steers through South Dakota sale barns.
Yeah.
Lots that are averaging a ton.
Mm.
We're using feed.
Mhm.
I mean, there's no question about that.
Mhm.
So the ethanol side looks good. The feed side looks good. I know you got the residual component of the feed and residual category. They can always play with that. I call it feed and fudge. But
Feed
then you got to
fudge.
come back to the export side of things.
Right.
And the export number has been really good. Good enough at least to get to USDA's current projection. So if we see any movement on the demand side for corn, I still think we get a bit of a lift. I think if there's movement on the supply side, the USDA has already shown us what the trend is. They probably got to back that yield, even though it's going to be a record yield.
Mhm.
They probably still need to back that yield off a bit, even if it's 50 million bushels, guys. I think that 50 million bushels comes off of carryover. So
Mhm.
instead of a 2.2 billion bushel carryover like we were talking about 4, 5, 6 months ago, we're not even talking about a 1.7 billion bushel carryover anymore. We're probably talking about a 1.55. And when you get right down to it and look at the way that the market is trading with basis levels and some of the spread action, the corn market's acting like supplies are even tighter than that.
True.
So I mean, the corn market's acting like it's a 1.4 on carryover, something
Mhm.
like that. Because what I'm thinking is that it's a stocks to use ratio a whole lot closer to 7.5% than to 10%.
Right.
So, corn market, it's not hard to come up with. I can be friendly corn.
Mhm.
It's not hard to come up with that story. Beans are a much tougher story to tell.
Mhm.
Um, we took we took 70 million bushels off of, or was it 80 million bushels off of bean carryover, and we're still at 470 million bushels. When you look at the global stocks situation, it's hefty. You mentioned, Dave, how can we bring that world buyer back to the market, back to the U.S.? Really, what we're talking about is how can we get China to back buying U.S. beans?
Mhm.
They like U.S. beans because they can store. They like U.S. beans because of the quality. But boy, they sure like to go to South America for price and
Mhm.
volume.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I the way that we get China to come back is to see some economic improvement in China. And I mean, you want to talk about a slow start coming out of COVID. This has been a complete failure to launch in
Yeah.
that economy.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. And even throw in the wheat, it isn't when we
Yeah.
talk about corn, it's amazing that we
Yeah.
have rallied up, especially with what's going on with wheat.
Oh, this wheat trade is just baffling to me, which doesn't surprise me because it's wheat.
Mm-hmm.
But wheat is pretty baffling to me because you look at the domestic balance sheet and I'm not that excited about it. You look at the global balance sheet and look at some of the things that are happening in China and India and Egypt and Algeria, the big wheat users, not just the importers,
Yep.
but the big wheat users. India right now has a record wheat price. Now they're not importing a lot of wheat because they've got adequate supplies for now. But it's a record wheat price, and we've got $5.50 wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, um, there's just the whole dynamics and the hesitancy to
Mm-hmm.
come to the U.S. to fill some of the needs that are out there. It's just baffling to me. It
Right.
really is. I, wheat is not a bad story to tell. I can get bullish wheat at five and a
Mm-hmm.
half dollars.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, it's. Go
So
ahead, Dave.
no, I was just going to say I don't want to stifle that part of the conversation. I was going to turn it back to the farm bill real
Yeah,
quick. I've
go right ahead.
had okay. I had a question that I'd heard in a couple of different spots, and I know it was mentioned on AgriTalk too, but is taking the prospect of incorporating tariffs into the farm bill, not just the kind of the background discussion, but into the farm bill itself. Have you heard or talked or had any thoughts along those lines?
Now, no,
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 like
I
including.
haven't. I don't think that trade issue and working tariffs into the farm bill. I just don't think that is something that Chairman Thompson or Chairman Bozeman would be real interested in doing.
It would make it tough to pass bill even tougher,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
For
I
sure.
got I got a feeling that John Thune would be
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
tapping would be tapping Bozeman on the shoulder, saying that just makes it harder for me to bring it to the floor.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yep, yep. Totally understand, and
yep,
it makes total sense too. But as
yep,
far as while we're on the farm bill, betting wager, right? So Thompson has mentioned he wants to get it passed in first quarter.
yeah.
There's some folks that say others are like very optimistic we'll get it passed in the first half of the year, and then others that are very pessimistic saying 2026.
Yep,
So what
that's
does
the
your
summary.
crystal ball say?
That's the summary right there.
Yeah,
You got it. I mentioned Thune, and I mentioned Bozeman. They've and that's where the thing has been stuck is in the Senate.
yeah,
She even if Stabenow would have gotten it done, and she could have done a whole lot
hmm
more to get that farm bill done than what she did.
Mm-hmm.
But even if she would have gotten it out of committee, was Schumer going to bring it to a floor vote? No
yeah.
way.
Probably not.
No.
No way.
Right.
You know, Schumer doesn't give a crap
Yeah.
about
Mm-hmm.
getting
Right.
that farm bill
Right.
done.
Mm-hmm.
John Thune, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Bozeman
Different
wants to
story
get
for.
it done and has already done what, 90% of the work with Thompson
Mm-hmm.
to get this thing done. Be because of that, now you got to look and see where it all fits on the legislative priority list, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got the 1 year extension,
Hmm
so that's cushion. If this one big beautiful bill starts to gain some momentum, they're not going to work on anything but that.
Right.
True.
Farm bill probably is not going to get a whole lot of attention until they get that done. Now, if it starts to break down and they start to break it into the different components, like I was talking about, you might have Thune and Johnson come together and say, listen, we need to show that we can get something done. Where's the easy pickings?
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
And that
That's a
might
really
be
good
where
point.
the farm bill would be then. So if the one big beautiful bill comes together, push the farm bill to the second half of the year. If it starts to break down, bring it to the first quarter.
Move it up. Yeah.
Yep.
No, good point. It'd be a good strategy too if either one of those situations were to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not. I noticed that you're not willing to put any money down on either of those three options.
No. No.
Smart man. It's a smart man.
You guys, this is the most unpredictable situation. I mean, we knew that we were getting into a period of uncertainty when we got into Trump 1.0.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that. And I would like to think that because we've got experience with a President Trump, that we would know a little bit more going into 2.0. I don't feel that way at all.
No, likewise. Different
No.
world. It's still
Yes.
a different world. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Chip, another thing that comes to mind, bringing it kind of home to us at FMH is your thoughts on the role crop insurance plays in everything we've really been talking about to this point.
The only thing that I was going to say on that is that's where every risk management plan should start, is with the crop insurance. Period. End of story.
Yeah.
It's where it's got to start.
All right, Ken. Any other questions
No.
for Mr. Flory?
I mean, we could go on and on and on, but I know
Oh, yeah, we
Chip's
could
a
take an
busy.
hour here.
He's
Yeah.
a very busy man, and we appreciate all his insights. So,
Oh, you guys, I appreciate the conversation. You know that.
For sure. And speaking of which, well, first of all, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your insight and everything that you do. And we've talked quite a bit about AgriTalk, but anything else that you kind of want to leave our listeners with as far as either ways to get a hold of you or ways to listen to you, ways to connect?
Hey, use that local farm radio station first and foremost, guys. But if you can't find it on farm radio, we're on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Just search for AgriTalk and PM AgriTalk and give us a listen if you haven't. We'd sure appreciate it.
Sounds
absolutely.
good.
All right, guys.
Excellent. Thanks, Chip. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chip.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
All right. Take care. All right. Well, Ken, that very informative. It's so great to have Chip on. He's just a fountain of information and can really bring insight from any direction, right? So that was that was really interesting. But so here's the $1 million question. I'm very interested. You wear many hats, my friend. You wear a FMH hat, you wear a sales hat, and very importantly, you wear your farm hat, right? So I'm really curious as to some of your takeaways from that conversation.
That was a blast. Thing that optimism. I loved hearing the optimism. Right now it's very easy to get down, especially with my farmer hat on, because this next year break evens are very difficult to find. So hearing his somewhat optimism on corn is exciting. Hopefully that'll carry beans along, even though he wasn't optimistic on beans, and obviously wheat is kind of in the same boat as beans. But he said we could get optimistic on wheat. Just what's going to change to get that these other countries grabbing our wheat. But so that was a big takeaway for me from that side. I did like, especially when we were talking about the farm bill there at the end, and hey, if this big package doesn't come through, the farm bill becomes the easy. That's with Thune and Boozman getting together and pushing that together as a package. That's really encouraging. Just to know. I mean, that's what a lot of farmers want is, what are the ground rules? What's the safety net that's in place from that side? And then, come to the crop insurance side. We've got tools every year to help, provide that critical safety net. But, what are the ones that help us when we're seeing really drastic drops? And it'd just be nice to know what all those rules are for maybe the next 4 or 5 years versus the next year, like it is this year. Right now, we're dealing with just an extension. So, yeah, I appreciate the optimism on corn, because I was looking for something optimistic, and
looking for something to hang your hat on.
Yeah. And it's easy to get down in the dumps because being in southern Minnesota, we didn't have a good crop, as many folks know, is one of the worst spots in the nation yield wise. So it's even more painful. But there's a lot of FSA checks coming the way it sounds.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I also thought the discussion around the Farm Bill was really interesting, and he's always got a unique take. A lot of this you can read like surface level in the art in some articles or some of just the literature you read, but I like to get his take because there's always some nuance in there. It's like, okay, well, it keeps folks from being well, it doesn't keep it from being cynical, but it allows you to have, to your point, a path forward or something to look forward to, something to kind of look down the road at, rather than just living in uncertainty. And it really helps with that, I think. And seeing that laid out, for example, with the big beautiful bill versus farm bill, and when we look at it,
Yes.
that was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm hopeful that, things that come in and Congress can get their work done and not have it be an ugly 2025, but we'll wait and see, right? It's going to be interesting.
You did notice he wasn't willing to put any money down on
No.
when it was going to pass. It will, and I'm fully confident of that as well. But
Yeah.
putting money on time frame is probably a smart bet not to take.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So boiling this down to, all of it impacts crop insurance risk management, right? And when we were talking to Chip, that's one of the things he mentioned. He's like, it all starts with a solid, sound risk management program. And obviously, with you being a buyer and someone who facilitates the sale right through our independent agencies, are there any things that you look at now with those different lenses that you kind of see this with? That you're thinking about, both as a grower and as a someone on the other side?
Yeah, this coming year, there's not a whole lot of changes in crop insurance, which is kind of nice. We've seems like every year we have a lot of big changes, but this year there's not. The one that we've talked about on some prior podcasts, the big one is obviously ECO with that big subsidy. Because when you look at dollars, I'm looking at my break evens on my farm. Crop insurance may not get there, or it's going to just barely get there. And trying to maximize that subsidy dollar is always the goal, right? So those packages where you can maybe add on some county plans to give that extra cushion with those higher triggers, I think has been on my radar and will definitely be on my radar for 2025. Question is, do you go with the highest levels on the regular multi-peril or not? That's probably going to depend on what happens in February with price. If we can't hold the prices we're at right now, if something does happen here at the end of the month in February where it trends a little lower, it's going to make some of those higher coverage levels a little harder buy, just because they maybe aren't at as many dollars as we've got in the past. It was a lot easier decision when we were dealing with $5 and $7 corn and your break evens were no problem. But now if you can't get to break even, do you take a little bit more self-insurance, so to speak? And, maybe like in our case, I know not all states have the luxury of having lower rates on the 80 and 85s, but in my case, an 85 and an 80, it may be the decision. Do we stay at an 85 or do I go back to an 80? But that's going to be the big decision, I think, for most producers. And we'll wait and see what the February prices bring. But definitely highly encourage producers to take a look at ECO with that increased subsidy to 65%. You got to look at it as a subsidized put. That's the way you got to think about it, because and it gives you yield protection right along with it. And the good news, you don't have to pay for it until the end of the year after you've taken the crop out. So versus doing a hedge up front and having to fund that from the front side. So it's not going to be as fun as it has been in the past. I won't lie, Dave, was making those decisions. But the good news is we still have great tools out there that we can customize to fit every producer's needs.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good question for me, and something that we've talked about a couple times in the past in just general conversation. But as you're talking about buying decisions as a customer, as a producer, and one of the things that is probably something that I know is something that some are considering is, well, do I just buy every single thing that's offered, right? And not to say that's not the right decision, right? It's all individual based, but what are your thoughts on that? Because the buy everything thing it's like, okay, well, let me just buy everything, as much protection as I can, And,
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like that's probably the right solution for everybody.
Yeah. That, prior years with more dollars to play with, that was an easy thing to do, buy everything. And in many cases that worked out well for producers. Now, boy, it's hard to throw. I mean, I know growers that were spending $90 an acre on insurance in prior years.
Yeah.
And if it worked and it allowed you to be aggressive on your forward marketing, probably worth it if you were aggressive. But if you're buying that and you're not using it to do the forward marketing to protect yourself, now we have these downturns, boy, you just added, maybe $30, $40 to your break even that maybe, if the conditions stay flat, if the yields are average and the price stays somewhat flat, it's not going to bail you out with the claims. So yeah, I think it's important to your question there. It's important to take a look, know your break evens. That's the big thing is, spend time. If you haven't, producers need to know what their break evens are. And maybe crop insurance can't get there, but just make the decision on what package gets you the closest and what can you stomach to self-insure, so to speak, if the insurance policy doesn't get to what you need. Because say I've been farming since 2004, and this is probably going to be, I know this is going to be one of the more challenging years from profitability in my tenure. So I'm going to be right there with everybody else. What is the right decision? And I'll be asking my agent, what should I do? Because it's easy for me to tell somebody else what to do, but when you're doing your own thing, it's sometimes hard to pull the trigger. But that, I need to listen to myself and do that. Have the break evens and
your own advice,
buy what I need. Yep,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a great discussion. Anything else come to mind that either from Chip's conversation or that comes to mind just now?
Yeah, one of the things just would mention, we talked a little bit about farm programs and stuff coming from FSA.
Oh, yeah.
So there's definitely several things that are coming, and don't forget about those because they're going to be critical in some cash flows to producers for 2025. I mean, with the economic loss payment that's supposed to be coming here, I think that was flagged with either a 90 or 120-day rollout from the signing of the bill. And then we've got the ERP programs for 23 and 24. And then depending where you're at, like say in my county, there will be ARC payments for 2024 because of the crop we had. Now I know areas that the yields are so good are probably not going to have county ARC payments, but there's potential to have 3 to 4, 2 to 4 payments depending on how your county turned out for yields in 2024. And then obviously 2023, if you had a rough year too, the ERP program will be kicking in for that one. So that's something to keep in mind as you're, keep those on your radar as you're working on your cash flows.
Yeah, good stuff. I really appreciate that. So I think if you don't have anything else, any other thoughts come to mind?
No, right. I'm just give me the crystal ball on what when I should pull the trigger on sales here, Dave. That's all I'm looking for.
Just keep that optimism, Ken. You'll be just fine, right? So okay, I think we'll just we'll call it good there. We'll wrap up, and I just want to thank Chip Flory again for joining us. Thank you, Ken. Always a great conversation. Love to get your perspective on things, and I want to thank everybody watching or listening. Really appreciate you taking some time to listen to FMH InsureCast, and make sure to check out the next InsureCast on any of the places you find podcast subscriptions or YouTube. So we will see everybody soon. Thank you.
You've been listening to FMH InsureCast. We appreciate you joining us today and would like to hear from you. If you have questions about today's topic or an idea to share for an upcoming podcast, you can contact us at fmhpodcast@fmh.com. Thanks for listening. This podcast is intended for information purposes only. See policy provisions, terms, and conditions for details. Products underwritten by Farmers Mutual Hail Insurance Company of Iowa and its affiliates, West Des Moines, Iowa. Farmers Mutual Hail is an equal opportunity provider.